Welcome into a brand new edition of the Desmond Johnson Show. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. Joining me for the first part of this broadcast, Ryan Smith, Ben Troupe from the Winning the Division podcast. You can find it on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. Every week, giving you everything you need for the NFL. We're going to play a little free agent Russian roulette, so to speak. Where should some of these free agent players land? We got some big names, some heavy hitters. We'll see what these guys think. They're knee deep in. I see you guys have been doing a lot of draft coverage and things of that sort with a lot of draft gurus and free agent gurus or whatnot. So you guys kind of pretty good idea of where you think some of these places are going to go. And then later on, I've got Dustin Shue, co-host of the Devil's Den podcast. He's going to come on. Of course, it's Duke Carolina week, so you knew we wasn't going to end the week without talking Duke Carolina a little bit more. And Dustin used to be one of my sparring partners on Facebook, going back and forth with Carolina Duke fans. Of course, he represents Duke. I represent Carolina. Once we kind of got off the cesspool of Facebook, we became friends, and now we're able to talk in a more cordial manner when it comes to, in my opinion, the greatest rivalry in all of college sports. But we'll go ahead and get into it. Let's go ahead and get going. Let's roll that intro. It's the Desmond Johnson Show.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city need that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you want and get your weed whack. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's fourth and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And welcome into an end of the week edition of the Desmond Johnson Show. Again, I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined here in the first segment by Winning the Division host Ben Troupe and Ryan Smith. Again, you can catch them pretty much midweek each week throughout the season and beyond. They're actually still doing new episodes right now over on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network. The audio is available there through the Fans First Sports Network. The video, you can catch it right here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel each week. Gentlemen, I wanted to bring you guys in because NFL free agency is going to basically kick off next week. Before I could even get home today, I left the house for like 4 or 5 hours. By the time I got home, players have been cut, like things are getting moved around. Like, so I'm sitting there trying to catch up myself in terms of what's out there, who's going to be available. And I figured the easiest way to do this would be let me just go to Pro Football Focus, and I'm going to pull up the top free agents here, and I'm going to basically call out a name. You guys are going to tell me who you got, where you think would be the best landing spot for said free agent. You guys can do this together. I can go one way, other way, however way you want to do it. But I'm going to skip past the first couple because they've already kind of got their situations in place. The number one free agent they had listed was T. Higgins, the wide receiver from Cincinnati, who just got franchise tagged for the second straight year. Ben, you're a former NFL player. Players don't like getting franchise tagged, do they?
They do not. I mean, I know everybody sees the guaranteed money, but it's only for 1 year. And a franchise tag can mean two things. One, either they don't believe in you past the 1 year, or two, they're going to utilize a franchise tag so they can indeed get a long-term deal done. Problem with T. Higgins right now is, even though they allowing Henderson to try to seek a trade, Jamar Chase is going to cost quarterback-type money, and it's going to be hard to have two $35-40 million a year guys at the receiver position.
Yeah, and I'm seeing one of the things I saw was Seattle put out the trade parameters for DK Metcalf, who actually requested a trade yesterday. They're asking for a first, a third, and something. DK wants a $30 million per year contract, whatever team signs him. And I'm like, I think there's only like 2 teams that could even do that, like in terms of like just being able to pull it off. Because of course I'm seeing Panther Nation like, we should go after DK Metcalf, and I'm like, why would we give up? What was it? I think a second and a fourth. I'm sorry, I think I said a first. No, it was a first and third. Why would we give up a first and a third for basically the same player as Xavier Legette, but younger? I mean, they're basically the same type of wide receiver, right? Big body, big hands. Now Xavier's not as fast probably as DK, and DK's been in the league longer. But you don't bring in a wide receiver and pay him $30 million a year when the rest of the team is 25, and like you're trying to figure this out. So Panther Nation, calm down. Like DK is not gonna be a Carolina Panther. So we're gonna skip past T. We're gonna skip past Trey Smith, who I'm not mistaken, I want to say got traded or they were moving him or something was going on.
You're thinking of Joe Tooney, who just got traded. Trey Smith is still on the Chiefs. They franchise tagged him.
Oh, okay, so he got franchise tag. Okay, and then Javon Holland's number 3, the safety from Miami. I do not think he's been franchise tagged. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
He is not.
Yeah, I think only 2 guys. I think only 2 guys out of all potential franchise guys. That was eligible for the franchise tag. It's only been 2.
So it's Higgins and Smith. Okay, so we can start off on, but I want to get down to a name that actually a lot of folks that watch this show might be interested in figure out where he goes. Wide receiver Chris Godwin from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've kind of comped him to Allen Robinson in terms of the type of receiver you get. But if you're a Carolina Panther fan, you know all about Chris Godwin and him terrorizing the Panthers defense over the past couple of seasons. Panthers need a little bit of everything. But where do you think would be the best spot for Chris Godwin to land? Ryan, let's start off with you. If not back with Tampa Bay, where do you think Godwin lands?
Well, I think Tampa Bay is where he's going to go back. But if he does not go back, Carolina would obviously be a good fit. Dave Canales knows him from his days there in Tampa Bay. Seattle, if they do end up trading DK, he could go there. That's another place that would need a wide receiver if DK Metcalf does immediately go. And they just released Tyler Lockett as well, who's a little younger. Godwin is a little younger than Tyler Lockett. But Desmond, before I go on, Ben's letting you off the hook. I was going to come over and victory lap you because of our Super Bowl prediction. We weren't going to let you get off that easy.
Oh man. Yeah. It wasn't so much that I was rooting for the Chiefs. I just didn't feel like it was a good idea to bet against them because they've never given me a reason. Every time I bet against them in the past, they always made me look stupid. And that was early in the Mahomes run. So I'm like, well, now we know who he is. Like, we know what's going on. I did not expect Philly to do what they did. I did not expect Philly to run down Kansas City's back. I thought their defense would be good enough to sustain it. But, hey, Philly did something I've said on my show, Believe in Panthers, all these other shows all the time when coming to football. I don't care if it's Pop Warner. I don't care if it's high school, college, or pro. You can stop the run and you can run the football. You're going to win more games than you lose. And you're going to be a really tough football team, like a hard-nosed team. And now it's the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're set up for I'm looking around the NFC, and I'm just like, I don't know. Like, who? Yeah. Maybe the 49ers. They're kind of in flux themselves. Detroit, maybe, but they haven't been there. The Rams are older. Minnesota's going to have a quarterback situation. Actually, we're probably about to talk about one of their quarterbacks here in just a bit. So I don't know. I'm looking around unless there's a team that springs up that we're not talking about that might be in the next couple of years ready to contend. Feels like the Eagles are about to start on this run that the Chiefs just went on. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that same Super Bowl next year. Like this might be our Cavs Warriors like period where we just see them every year in Super Bowl for like 4 years straight. But shout out to y'all. Y'all did both pick the Eagles. I did clown you both for picking them when it did go down. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with both of y'all, but hey.
Anyway, we were going to let you off the hook. But anyway, one of the free agents you just named, actually, before you said Chris Godwin, then I'll go ahead and tell you, I will give you my prediction for him. Trevon Holland, who you just mentioned, safety from Miami Dolphins. Not only is he not going back to Miami, I think he's coming to Carolina.
Ooh, okay. They're comping him to Jesse Bates here on Pro Football Focus, and so I need a safety.
Carolina. That's my prediction.
Carolina needs everything.
If Chris Godwin is not going to go to Tampa, he's going to go up north to a team up there in Jacksonville who just traded Christian Kirk to the Texans. I mean, I think when you look at what Chris Godwin is, he's good enough to play on the outside, but he's been hurt so much he's probably going to be regulated to the slot. I think Chris Godwin likes what he sees in a team like Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, and he wants to go to a division going from the NFC South to the AFC South, a very, very winnable division. And like I said, you coming off 2 injuries, you're going to get him for a real, real good price. I think they're going to be scared to give him anything more than 2 years, maybe 3 at the most. But I think Chris Godwin's right around 29, 30 years old. Very productive, but very injury prone. And whenever it's time for him to get a new deal, he comes off a big injury. We'll see what happens, but it's definitely going to be a market for him.
That's the one thing that kind of keeps me from going all in with him with Carolina is the injury history. He had an ankle dislocation to end the season last year, so we don't know speed-wise what he's going to be when he comes back and everything else, but is familiar with the division and is familiar with Dave Canales and Brad Isdick, the offensive coordinator for Carolina, came over from Tampa Bay, so they're very familiar with Chris Godwin, so I would think they would kick the tires on him once free agency opens here in a bit. Ben Troupe and Ryan Smith, co-hosts of Winning the Division, joining me here on the Desmond Johnson Show as we try to just go through potential free agents here as we go around the NFL. Here's one that's a little interesting. Edge rusher Khalil Mack, Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers just cut Joey Bosa, so he's going to be floating out there. Mack came over, and let's see. They're saying it's similar to Von Miller when he signed his deal with Buffalo. I didn't realize that Von Miller deal was a 6-year, $120 million contract. It was probably more like 3 years, $50 million, something like that. But that's probably what you're looking at with Khalil Mack, who's on the backside of his career at this point. But he has had a bit of a resurgence the past 2 years. He's had an 86.3 pass rushing grade from Pro Football Focus, and he had 88 quarterback pressures in 2023, which was his highest total since 2016. Who could use Khalil Mack's services, and where do you think Khalil might go? And I'll just open it up to both of you.
I'm going to say the New Orleans Saints. Brandon Staley with the Charger connection.
They don't have any money. They don't like the Saints are the brokest team in the league, aren't they? Like,
it doesn't matter. Like you said, Khalil backside of his career, Saints can do some finicky things with the cap. And the cap is not real. That's the number one thing people don't realize. It's all about the cash. You can manipulate the cap. Cap is just some accounting at the end of the day. Just whatever you can do to manipulate the books. That's what the smart teams do. How do you think Philadelphia gets to trade for all these players and sign all these wonderful people every single year? Because Howie Roseman knows how to manipulate the books. That's how the smart teams do that at the end of the day. And that's why the rich stay rich and the teams like the Jets and the Browns, they stay at the bottom. That's
literally why the Panthers brought in Brant Tillis from Kansas City to handle that very thing, to be able to do that. Tillis is the one that constructed the Pat Mahomes deal, which now, how old is that deal? 2 years? Maybe? Was it 2 off seasons ago when he signed that? It was like $450 million. He's not even like
all they're going to do is when it comes time to re-sign guys, they're going to restructure money. They're going to take back end money. They're going to put it in the front end. They're going to give you more of a signing bonus. If you look at Saquon Barkley's contract, I don't know why they don't give him a bunch of money to sign up front. I don't know. Guys should be playing for $1 million a year. It shouldn't matter how much money I play for per game if I'm getting my money up front.
Right.
But to get back to the Khalil Mack, I think two teams are going to look to snatch him up real quick because he want to go to a contender. Look out for a team like Baltimore because he want to go to a defense that needs some help, and he can definitely help out a Baltimore Ravens team. But the thing about Khalil Mack is, man, look, we mentioned Von Miller. We mentioned Buffalo. Von Miller is, he's at the tail end of his career. If he comes back, don't be surprised if a Buffalo jump in because Khalil Mack makes your defense better. I don't care what defense that is. He doesn't want to go to a defense that's rebuilding. He want to go to a team that's reloading. So I see a Baltimore. I can see a team like Buffalo. But I think Khalil Mack respects Mike Tomlin. He likes it because he wants to have a guy on the other side. TJ Watt on one side, Khalil Mack on the other side. I think NFC North is going to be in the Khalil Mack business.
That's good. I like that. So Pittsburgh, Baltimore, one of those two, either one of those would be like hand in the glove for Khalil Mack at this part of his career. I'm going to skip down the list a little bit because I only got you guys for a short amount of time today. Sam Darnold, quarterback, Minnesota Vikings, started out gangbusters this year, had some MVP consideration, and then it just kind of like at the end of the year, and either teams figured him out or just the simple luck of the draw of they went, what was it, 14-3. And 2 of those 3 losses were to the Rams. And those 2 losses, I think, were in LA, if I'm not mistaken. One of those was the playoff game. They had to fly to LA to play the Rams in the playoff round. And they had only lost to them 2, and I think Detroit. That was it, like the whole year. So kind of weird. Sam kind of got exposed a little bit in both of those. But even if he doesn't come back to Minnesota, he's going to command top dollars. There's a number of teams that could use a Sam Darnold to step right in and start. Carolina tried it ourselves a couple of years ago, and actually, if they'd been more patient, he'd probably be still the starter here. But we know how that goes. With Sam Darnold, starting off with you, Ryan, where do you think would be the best place for him to go, Minnesota included?
Minnesota. They are gonna re-sign him. Daniel Jones is getting ready to leave and go off to a team in the AFC. Maybe the Colts, maybe somewhere like that, to help with Richardson there and that whole debacle in Indy. But Darnold is going to re-sign with the Vikings for, I want to say, like a 2-year deal. I think that J.J. McCarthy knee is really concerning the Vikings, and Darnold played well enough last year to earn another contract, even if it's because it sounds like they're going to try to do it for more than 1 year, and if they can't come to that agreement, then you might see him go somewhere else. But I'm going to say Vikings get it done. He resigns for 2 years.
Ben, real quick, what do you think about Sam Darnold?
I think Sam Darnold finds himself on a flight back to New York, only this time it's going to be the New York Football Giants. They are a team in desperate need of a quarterback. And look, it didn't work out the first time with the Jets, but the Jets haven't had a good quarterback in a long time. I think Sam Darnold has got over some kinks, and Malik Neighbors is very, very attractive for any quarterback that want to throw the ball to him. I see him back in New York. This time it's going to be for the G-men. I think when you talk about the Giants, they need some good news. Bad. They need something good to happen to them really, really quickly. Well, their old quarterback went to Minnesota and backed them up. Now he's gonna become the starter out there with New York. That way, even if they still go quarterback in the draft, which I think they still will some way, either the first or second round, I think Sam Darnold finds himself back in the Meadowlands this time, representing the G-men.
It's crazy to mention the Giants. It made me remember the Hard Knocks season they did last year, the off-season one, the one they usually don't do, and now no team wants to do it. It's because they did the Giants last year, and
that was
the
not
worst. That I left that season like that GM needs to be fired before week one. Like, what is going on here? Like, you just basically let Saquon walk out the door. Like, you're basically telling everybody what you're going to do. It's like it felt wrong. It felt dirty like, listening to him, and it was like, I don't know if this dude knows what he's doing. And then Saquon Barkley was off half the year he had with your division rival and win the Super Bowl. So it's, yeah. So New York, that might be an option there. I'm going to leave you with the last one here. Actually, both of you guys here, because this might actually affect the Panthers. Edge Josh Sweat from the Philadelphia Eagles. He signed an early extension in 2021 with the Eagles, a revised one-year contract for 2024. He had 8 sacks this past regular season. They lost Hassan Reddick. And Brandon Graham went down to injury, so he had a lot of space to do his thing. He had a 75.5 PFF overall grade in the regular season. They're comparing him on PFF to Paul Kruger. Ryan, where do you think will be the best spot for Josh Sweat, or who do you think will be going after him?
I think the Panthers will make a play for him. I do think they will get outbid, though. I think a team like either the Lions, the Bengals, somewhere like that makes a lot of sense. Trey Henderson they just gave him permission to request a trade. The Lions need somebody else opposite Aiden Hutchinson, and the Lions are able to make that work. I think he's not going to cost as much as Myles Garrett is going to cost. So I think Josh Sweat would be a good fit for Detroit. I think Carolina is going to sign his teammate Milton Williams. That is my prediction on that side of the ball for Carolina.
Ben?
Oh, man, Josh Sweat, I mean, because he's already won a Super Bowl, he's going to command top dollar. I don't think he's really worried about going to a contender. I can see him going to a team like the Cincinnati Bengals because he says, look, I mean, Sam Hubbard retires, Henderson, he's going to hit free agency. I get to be the alpha male on the defensive line. I mean, once you win a Super Bowl now, you ain't ring chasing, you chasing money. So he's going to get his money. And like you said, Smitty, he's going to command top dollar for what he did in the Super Bowl. I don't know if he's a premier pass rusher, but what he did in the Super Bowl got to matter. People are going to pay a lot more than they should for him. I don't see him finishing that contract, but I see a team like Cincinnati. Hey, maybe a team like Miami. They've dealt with a lot of injuries on the D-line. They cannot keep these D-linemen healthy, but I just think a guy like Josh Sweat is good because of the guys around him. I don't know how good he is if he got to be the alpha male. Somebody like Cincinnati, they don't mind having a guy like him that can hopefully – because you got to have pass rushers in that division. I don't know if he's the guy that's going to solve it. But you losing essentially your top pass rushers, you got to add a big time guy. I can see Sweat going to Cincinnati.
I can see the Cincinnati one. I can see that. I've seen him being attached to Carolina too. I've also seen Green Bay maybe going after him as well. I saw the Sweat stuff before the Super Bowl being attached to the Panthers, and honestly, they don't really have a pass rusher. Jadeveon Clowney, I guess, is their best one, but they don't really have one, and they need 2. So, like, if they can get Sweat and then get somebody else. You get Derek Brown back next year from injury, so it's almost like you're getting a first-round draft pick that's extra. They can kind of redo the D-line quicker than a lot of people anticipate. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on everything else. If you guys that are out here watching and listening want to get the latest NFL coverage, these guys are on top of it, especially right now. Free agency period starts next week. Then they'll go even deeper into draft coverage. Winning the division, co-host Ben Troupe and Ryan Smith. Again, you can catch them on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. The videos are always available each week on Spack Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel. The audio is available on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network on any major platform that you listen to podcasts on. Guys, appreciate you coming through. And, hey, keep going. Keep doing what you guys are doing. And you continue to find an audience. So keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate it, Des.
Thank you, Desmond.
I'll definitely bring you guys back towards draft time too, because I was watching some of your shows. I'm like, okay, they got like draft gurus on here, like like breaking down stuff. So I'm gonna bring them back through. So I'll definitely get you guys back on.
Quick plug for this Monday. One of Ben's former teammates will be joining us on the show. Former wide receiver Derek Mason played for the Titans and the Ravens.
There you go.
He'll be joining us on the show. So come watch us and catch up on his time in Tennessee, Baltimore, and what he's doing now.
Well done. Excellent work, gentlemen. Coming up next, Dustin Shu, co-host of the Devil's Den podcast. He's going to join me. We're going to go through keys of the game. We've already talked earlier this week. Carolina, Duke. Carolina's playing well. Duke's playing even better. I'm not expecting a blowout like it was the last game. It should be a lot closer. It's senior night in Chapel Hill as well. So it's RJ Davis's senior night. So we'll get some keys of the game from Dustin here in just a bit. You're watching the Desmond Johnson Show. And welcome into segment 2 of today's show here on the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobacco-road-sports-radio.com. Shout out to winning the division co-host Ryan Smith and former NFL tight end Ben Troupe for stopping by. Talk a little NFL free agency. Now we've got two of my friends here, Dustin Shu and Josh Smith, co-host of the Devil's Den podcast. If you're a Duke fan or ACC basketball hoops fan, definitely check them out on all major podcast platforms. Didn't get a chance to put them on the first time Duke and Carolina played, partly because I kind of knew what Carolina was walking into, and I was like, I don't want to really go too deep into it, but things have changed a little bit, and we might get a little bit of a better game. What's going on, gentlemen? How y'all doing?
Great, man. Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, man. Doing well. Happy to be here.
So before we end this show, I wanted to get into real quick, before we get to the keys of the game for what you feel like Duke needs to do and what you think Carolina needs to do, I wanted to touch on this whole Cooper Flag maybe coming back sophomore year thing. Me and Dustin were talking about it off camera before Josh got on, but we all, I think, feel like he's not going to come back. Like, he shouldn't come back. Like, he needs to go ahead and go. But my question is, how far away do you think we are from top 5 overall potential picks actually staying for sophomore year? And what kind of money do you think that would entail? Because with NIL, it feels like all bets are off. If you got a booster or somebody that's willing to give a kid $15 million to stay for another year at Arkansas or whatever, it seems like that's the next step. How far away do you think that is? And do you think that could be something that actually helps the ACC? Because it does feel like there's a bit of a not only a coaching talent drain, but a talent drain right now amongst the entire league. And it might just be due to adding too many teams at once, watered down, whatever it is, SEC paying out more, whatever the case may be. But your thoughts on NIL and where it might be heading with Cooper Flag's comments about wanting to stay?
Well, I think it depends on the school, for one. I can't remember, Josh, you might know, Paulo's going number 1. His rookie contract might have been between $5 and $7 million as the number 1 pick over 3 years, something around that.
That sounds
right.
So
there's kids, I don't know if there's kids demanding unless you're AJ DeBansa, getting $5 million for a year. So I don't think we're far off from it, but again, I think it depends on the school, because some of your smaller schools probably aren't going to dole out $5, $6, $7 million for one kid for just 8 more months.
I did find Paulo's rookie contract. It was 4 years, $50.1 million. He earned $11.1 million during his rookie year, the 2022-23 season, which you'd be talking about here. So roughly, yeah,
11 million for his first season, for his rookie season.
First rookie, yeah.
Okay, yeah, wow.
Okay.
So I mean, you're talking about, would Duke have been willing to shell out? See, that's the difference too. Like, does Duke have to? Because Duke's got kids coming in right behind them. So do you really need to? I guess for someone like Paulo or maybe Zion or Cooper Flag, the ones that are going to be like number 1 picks, maybe you try. But I guess for some schools, you wouldn't have to do it, because Duke kind of has a train of talent coming in anyway. Other schools, kind of like a NC State, perfect example. NC State. Now, they don't have the money to do that kind of thing, but if they had a player at that level, I'd imagine they might go and try to start doing that type of thing. Josh, your thoughts on this? Because it seems like something that like a school like Kansas would probably need to start doing, or something like that.
It's going to be hard to match the money, I think. And I think the other thing is, you look around and maybe no shot here to you, Des, right? But you look around and it's like, well, sometimes these things aren't exactly equitable, right? Like the same thing that we gave to Cade Tyson maybe we gave that to Brady Manick, and it's very different, like results, right? Or like a Nigel Pack at Miami. That was a huge story when it comes out, and it's like, is that $400,000 or $500,000 investment? Did it pay? Maybe it did. I don't know. But I think that's a growing conversation too of like, how do we evaluate worth here? What do we get out of it? Like, are we really going to enter into some kind of contractual thing, whether it's just kind of buyout clauses or I don't know where it's going. It's a little scary though, that it's just not like there's no parameter to it.
I didn't even think about buyout clauses and things like that. Cause a lot of people don't realize that college scholarships or not scholarships, but college, like, athletic scholarships, they're year to year. Like it's not like when you go, you're guaranteed to be there for 4 years. They have to basically renew it each year. So when you said the buyout thing, yeah, you're kind of right. You can't get a kid and be like, hey, we want you for 2 years and we'll pay you $20 million when they're doing it from year to year. You almost have to negotiate with them every year, which is gonna make it even harder to keep players. So I don't know. I'm still up in the air about how I feel about this because I do like the idea of players getting paid. I never could figure out how they're gonna make it even. I never could figure out how they were going to do this where the ACC men's side is a mess. And right now it's like 3 teams, Duke, Clemson, Louisville, that are getting in. The rest is just kind of they might get in, they might not. Then you look over the women's side, they're over in Greensboro right now. RL Bynum was on earlier this week and covering the ACC women's tournament. And like half the ACC women are ranked and dominating college women's hoops. Like I know it's not the same level of money and it's not the same level of revenue, but it's still basketball. Like it's still, you're still attracting them to the school or whatnot. And I'm really nervous about the ACC in terms of what's going to happen in the next 5 years, especially with what happened with Clemson and Florida State and the law stuff earlier this week, where it feels like 2030 is almost the finish line. Like once you get there, what we see right now in the ACC, either they're going to grow bigger and become like a super conference with like 24 teams, which is what I'm hoping for. Go raid the Big 12, go get Kansas, go get Baylor, go get Houston, that kind of thing, and just make a super league and be done with it. Or it's going to start to splinter apart, and Florida State's going to go to the Big 10, and Clemson's going to want to go to the SEC and this kind of thing. But because of how large the league is right now, I don't know if they can get back to where they were before, which has kind of dampened a little bit from the outside. I think the marquee of this game, where normally UNC Duke is considered the best college basketball game in college basketball every year, regardless of what the teams are doing. This year, I feel like people have tried to take the shine off of it a little bit. On social media or whatnot, like, why are you promoting this and blah, blah, blah. It's still Duke, Carolina. Like, I don't understand it, but that's my soapbox. But the ACC right now, I want to get to the keys to this game because you guys have been not only watching Duke beat the brakes off everybody the past year, but really the past like month, they really put the pedal down to the floor. From what you see with Duke, is it a situation where if they just play their game, they're pretty much going to beat whoever's in front of them, or is there a weakness to this Duke team because they have lost? They're not undefeated. They lost to Kansas. They lost to Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. Clemson caught them. So what do you think in those losses that Duke had? What was the number one reason why they lost those games?
Well, I don't think it was the number one reason, but one of the common things is every team that we lost to shot 40% or better from 3 in those. Kentucky and Clemson both shot 40. Kansas shot 47%. The other thing is rebounding. That's kind of been, between Josh and Raul and myself, one of our sticking points with this Duke team this year. One of the little things that you can nitpick about is the rebounding at times, especially defensive rebounding or allowing other team to get a lot of offensive rebounds. That's been a little sore spot for us. So I think that's 2 things. If they take care of that, they should be okay.
I think for me, I think you kind of nailed the actual part, but if we look at just the significance of the game, that's one thing if you're a Duke fan. Historically, when you set it up of the second game in Chapel Hill where Duke has a chance to win the ACC regular season, typically I think we're like 1-9 in those games, folks, over the last like 10 or so, right? This has been a game that we have struggled to kind of take that for whatever reason in that matchup. So that we get a chance to come by and really do that. I think it's been pretty documented that over the last like 15 years, folks, Duke's only won the ACC regular season outright like once. I think we've shared it 2 or 3 times. 2010 we shared. But so that's something that's there for us. Can we match that? Now Duke has momentum or motivation because if you drop this game, like Clemson and Louisville probably aren't losing. So
I
there's
was
a
going to say
scenario where you
they
could
could
be
go down
18
to
and 2.
the
Yep.
they go down to the 3 seed or something like that if they
and
lose.
we're
this
not
game
even the
Saturday.
1 seed in our conference. So there's motivation for Duke there. And I think there's also a lot of motivation for Carolina on the flip side to say, wait a minute, we get a chance to kind of all this other stuff kind of goes away a little bit, right? Like you get momentum, excitement's back. We're entering the ACC tournament here. Just got the win over Duke, firmly in the tournament, not worried about that. So, there's a lot here, even though it hasn't been built up for it. There's a lot on the table.
I will say, I don't think this is the last time these two teams see each other. I think they're going to see each other next week again in the ACC tournament, probably in the ACC semifinals. That would be a Friday matchup, I believe. If Carolina keeps the 4 seed, they would be on that top bracket with Duke, so they would see them there. So they'll get a shot. Carolina needs to win this game just to get into the tournament, I think. They only have one quad 1 win. My understanding, no team with just one quad 1 win has ever made it into the tournament, even though Bubba Cunningham is the head of the tournament committee. I don't know how he's going to be able to push that one in front of them unless they beat Duke. And then even then, I can't imagine them leaving them out if they beat Duke the way they've been playing the past 10 days, 14 days or so. Looking at the other side with Carolina from your guys' perspective, because Lord knows everyone's heard my perspective on this game enough throughout the week. What do you see with Carolina right now that concerns you in terms of what they're doing as opposed to what Duke may or may not have been doing on defense or whatever during the course of a game? It feels like you were saying that the 3-pointers and that kind of thing, if Carolina's hitting threes like they have in the past 2 weeks, that might be a thing that they can exploit. But is there something that you're seeing with Carolina that you're like, okay, that's different than the last time we saw them? We need to keep an eye on this.
Well, I think the obvious thing, they changed up the lineup, right? Last time we played, felt like Hubert started Washington with 4 guards,
Four
maybe?
guards. Yeah. They went 4 guards.
Yeah, he had Tribble, Davis. He had
Joe and Jackson out there, right? Cadeau, Jackson, Davis.
Yeah, Cadeau out there.
Because he put Tribble on Coop, and that was working for a little. I mean, that kind of threw him off for a little bit there. So,
So I think the lineup changed because now you're playing Val and Withers together, right? Like Washington's back to the bench.
Yeah. Washington's coming off the bench. Withers is starting at the 4. And Troupe's coming off the bench too. Yeah. So they're starting Drake Powell at the 5.
So I think they've been rebounding better, at least what I've been. I haven't watched all their last games of the last couple of weeks, but just looking over the stats, shooting better, rebounding better. So maybe there's no coincidence why they're on their largest winning streak of the season.
It does feel like 2022 a little bit. That 2022 team, of course, had some height with Brady Manick and Armando Bacot in the middle. This team kind of doesn't, although Ben Allen Lubin's been playing better. They've been playing better as a whole, like overall, and it looks like they're actually having fun, which it didn't look like they were having throughout most of the year with all these short losses or the little 1 point, 1 possession losses they were having. And that was kind of my thing. People were like, "Oh, Carolina's struggling." I'm like, "Yeah, but look who they played, and they were all like 1 possession games they lost. It was like 11 of them. It felt like so." They haven't really been blown out except for Duke and Clemson. Clemson took it to them, but they were on the road. Little John there. Yeah. Josh, your thoughts on main weakness or anything you might see from that Carolina might be able to exploit?
I think it's going to be, we can give up some threes, like you mentioned, right? Because we are going to focus on like defending that paint. We're going to try to funnel you to spots. Now, we're not going to try to give up a ton of open ones, but that's going to be there, right? If you can find a guy down in the deep corner, or if you got a guy like RJ who has not had the year that I think he thought he was going to have coming back, but this dude's still bucket. Like if you're not coming out on him, if you're like missing a step there, or God forbid you go under on a screen, you let this guy hit his first, second, he starts to hit some, really opens things up. I'll be interested to see how we defend Cadeau. We've seen teams try to do that, kind of like how teams defended Duke in 2019 with Trey Jones, and they just said, we're going to put our 5 on you, and you just kind of figure it out. We'll see. I don't know if that's the best plan for Duke to utilize in that, because we haven't played that way. But that's there, that's there. I think the 3-point shooting is going to be something that could possibly be there for Carolina at the pace that they're playing. Like none of these teams have played a close game. Like people are talking about Duke blowing teams out. Well, over the last 6, Carolina hasn't played a close game either, folks. They're rolling teams. They're rolling teams right now, right?
So 20 points per game. They've been averaging.
That'll be interesting. How do these teams look if for the first time in a month we're in a nail biter here. We're in a one possession game. Like, y'all haven't done that. We haven't done that in a while. That's been our biggest criticism of in a one possession game late. What do you do? So that's what I'm looking for. How do we respond if we get that goated level Duke Carolina, battle at the top? Who breaks?
I think we are. I think we're going to get something like that Saturday night. It's kind of setting up for it. There's too much on the line for both teams, so I think they're both going to really be playing hard. And I think both Shire and Hubert have kind of figured out their rotations and kind of figured out the matchups they want. Like, who do I want there the last 5 minutes of the game? Who do I want to start it with? Like, that kind of thing. They've kind of figured out combos and rotations on both sides. Real quick from you guys, give me a prediction. What do you think was going to happen in this game here Saturday night?
I mean, I'll go first. I think a lot of this depends on whether Malik Brown plays, but if he plays, he just changes our defense because his is able to just change and every position and play all over the place on the floor. If Malik steps in and plays, I'm going to go Duke 92, Carolina 78.
92. Okay. Yeah. I think the first half is just going to be an absolute war is what I think. Now after that, Duke is just wore teams down. I mean, we are just grinding teams to doing the same stuff over and over. And then all of a sudden we look up and Wake's down 40. Now I don't think Carolina's going to be down 40, but I'll be interested to see, can we maintain our level of just commitment to just grinding you out in a game of this magnitude where you might lose focus of the game plan. You might get outside of what you were doing. We'll see. We haven't done that yet. It's hard to sweep, man. We got swept last year, so I'll take it. I think Coop's just playing at a different level, and I think he's the one guy looking at that roster of for them to figure that part out at the level that he's been playing at. So, we got Coop. I'll keep rolling with Coop, man. I'll take Duke by about, I think Ken Palm's got about 11. I'll go 10, but I think it's going to be a close one, man. I think it's going to be a grindy one.
Do you think we let Carolina hit 80 points? Nobody scored 80 on us this year.
Nobody scored 80.
Ooh, that's a fun fact right there. Yeah, that's interesting because I think
Auburn hit 78. That's the most we've given up.
Wow, that's a testament to Duke's defense this year too, because you guys have played some squads. Wow, Kansas, Kentucky, none of them got up over 80.
None of them got 80. Yeah, that's a good one. I'll say no simply because I think both teams. There's been so much focus on the offense that I think this week of practice, both coaches are just going to hammer defense. And we might get something that's just like a 75. You could get that. I could see that happening. Carolina's played good defense this year. Not really lately, but they've shown that they can play it. Maybe
they've done it in spurt. They have the past 6 games, but then they also had a 5-game stretch after or before that where they weren't playing good defense, and that's where you get these little one-possession losses or whatever. So for me, I think it comes down to which Carolina team shows up. If the Carolina team that played Virginia Tech the other day shows up, it's going to be a game. If the Carolina team that played Duke last month shows up, then it's going to be 40-15 or whatever in the first quarter, and we're going to be like, we don't know what to do. We can't do like basic passes and stuff like that. That was the frustrating part of that first game. They couldn't even do like bounce passes and stuff. Like Duke was just on them like dogs, and I would expect Carolina to have learned from that. It's senior night. It's RJ's senior night in the Dean Dome. There's going to be a lot going on. I think RJ might have a big game. If he's going to have one, this would be the game for him to do it in. And again, I think they're going to see each other again next week anyway. So I don't know if it's really going to matter in terms of seeding or anything like that when it comes to this game. But I think they're on collision course again for next week. So, but we got to get out of here. Again, Carolina Duke is at 6:30 Saturday night on ESPN. We do have North Carolina A&T, the first round of the CAA conference tournament, taking on Hofstra. That is later on today. We have it here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and the Aggie Sports Network. Pregame at 4 o'clock with myself and Spencer Turkin. Tip-off live at 4:30. You can hear that here or on the light in Greensboro on terrestrial radio. So for Dustin Shue, Josh Smith, Ryan Smith, Ben Troupe, everybody came in today. Appreciate everybody coming through. We will see you guys next week.